All right, great. Well, thanks for joining us here in December of 2025 for our Kentucky K-12 CIOs and EdTech Leaders webcast. I'm David Couch with the Department of Education. For those that are new, this is something we do monthly with our districts and with all of our Kentucky education technology partners and all the other folks that play a role in helping with education technology in K-12. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. We'll go right down. I sent the agenda yesterday, and we'll be going right down the agenda along with the summary notes that Lisa Moore does with a little bit of help with AI. Right, Lisa? I think she helps you out a little bit from the last meeting that we had. One note I would have to say is we talked about, and John, I know you're going to give a computer science update, and I know we gave a code.org update to our OET staff like 2 weeks ago, but the last time we were meeting with districts, I don't think we had had that discussion yet in the details of it. So I did put the new code.org link in the summary notes where we talked about code.org for 2025 for those results, just so you're aware of that. I think that's one of the things that has changed. So first up is our Kentucky K-12 data systems update. Dita, I know we had the IC conference, which is always a great event from districts across the state and our staff, and I know we were going to talk about Infinite Campus server moves and probably the school report card dashboard. I know we have a couple of poll questions. But anything else you want to discuss? So,
yeah,
Dita, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Can.
Awesome. Okay, happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas, however you celebrate. I hope it's a great one. I'm looking forward to it myself. Just some quick updates. School report card suite. Really, it's just the leftover stuff. We sent out information to superintendents last week that reminded them of all the posting and things like that had to be done. It has to be in the local newspaper with the highest circulation. It has to be on your website. All those type of things are just reminders every year. If you've been around for a while, you know those. If you are like, this is news to me, reach out to me. I can give you the information, or information is on the school report card resources webpage. So we did close the collection tool, so no more changes will be made. Assessment and accountability data is still going under review. Some of the appeals and things like that were done. We don't expect that data to get refreshed until the end of January. So it'll be a while before we close it out, and then we open it back up for the spring financial reporting. But for the most part, just want to thank everybody because it took a lot of work to get here, and it's a combined effort. The districts put a lot of work into this, so I want to make sure we thank them for their work on that. For the Infinite Campus server, it's getting close. The updates are starting this weekend. It'll go through our state edition. Will go over the weekend is the first thing that moves. We've had a couple of districts that have gone before, so it's not actually the first thing. But during the time of December 19th through December 21st, that means the student locator and staff location, a staff locator are not available. So don't try to enroll students or transfer of staff during that time. That's dependent on having a connection to the state edition. So that is important to remember on that. So make sure your folks understand that. Timing wise, we're hoping we're doing a pretty good job of getting it where there's not a lot of that going on. So same thing with records transfer. And if you try to run a report that hits the KDE state edition site, it's going to give you an error message. So just have folks be patient. And as everything gets back up towards the first part of January, everything should be operating as it has in the past, just a new data center. So we do want to make sure that everybody is planning for that information and working with the Infinite Campus ticket. If you have questions that are outstanding, we did a Q&A. We've posted it on our website with the training and other training information. But if you still have questions, put those in your ticket with Infinite Campus. Infinite Campus is the best source of that information. We can help some, but this is something that is done by Infinite Campus, so they are going to be your best point of contact for that. Those of you that have ATCs and you use the KTS Data Exchange, just want to mention that will be down for December 22nd through January 2nd too. So hopefully that doesn't impact anybody. There was also a audit process that districts got a ticket It was a technical point of contact that might have been you. It might not have been you. It might be not. It might not be you. But you might want to reach out to your case's point of contact or whoever the technical point of contact is to make sure the access account audit was something that was reviewed, responded to, because that information is important because it shows you who has access to your system. And we've had some email, some questions that have come here is, should Blackboard still have access to my system, or should a cost only if you still have a contract with them. If not, that door needs to be closed. And this is an opportunity to point that out to maybe some of the new CIOs that didn't know they were around. So please make sure that you're aware of that audit process and who has access, and make sure there's not any doors open that you're not aware of. David mentioned Interchange. It was a great event. A lot of good information. Saw some CIOs there. Always appreciate seeing some familiar faces from the CIO group. And over 135 districts were represented. If your district was one of the ones that couldn't, or even if they were, all the KDE sessions have been posted. All the PowerPoint presentations are out on the campus community site. So reach out and look at that for in-campus passport so that you can get access to those sites. We do have some training coming up. We've posted that, some data privacy training. If you need data privacy training or incident response vetting, there is some good training being provided over the December 16th, today, some of it on through the first of the year. All that information is on our cases training site. So please take a look for that information. David, the only other thing I wanted to mention is the Social Security number. We have Social Security number. We looked the last time I looked, and it's been probably 2 weeks. It was before interchange. We had about 22 districts that had removed Social Security numbers. That doesn't mean they removed every Social Security number, but they have used that tool and they removed at least some staff or student IDs. As student, I can't get out, staff or student Social Security numbers. So that is great. Applaud those districts that have already done that. Encourage the others of you that maybe you haven't or you're not sure. Look at that as maybe a New Year's resolution. Have those conversations locally. Think about, why do we need these? Do we really need, at minimum, do you really need Social Security numbers in your data system of students that have already graduated, that are no longer enrolled in your schools? Where can you start by, in the Social Security number data diet? Remove those to lessen the risk of those Social Security numbers being exposed. Dave, anything you want to add on that topic? I know.
Yeah, I do appreciate the chance and opportunity to meet with the Infinite Campus staff too when I was there. And I always take the opportunity after Charlie Kratz gives his opening speeches to meet with him one-on-one to go over a listing of items. He always does point out that while nothing's here is 100% perfect in Kentucky, in comparison to the other states, is the relationship between the Department of Education and districts. He would rate it an A. It equates to getting a lot of things done. While nothing's 100% perfect, they always applaud that. I know in that opening that he talks about that. But I appreciate his staff's time to meet with me to kind of go over a variety of topics. I know I talked about there's an initiative I'm going to talk about here a little bit about from the governor's office about pre-K data system. And I was able to talk to Infinite Campus about the role that they could play in doing that. You're mentioning Social Security numbers, and this is just a follow-up to Michael Mock and Lisa and the others that were at the event. I told them I would document. Lisa, Dee Dee, you came up with a listing of items for me to kind of go over with, and I added a few. I'm going to send that to them. One of the items related to Social Security numbers, I asked, for example, for grades K through 8, can that just be blanked out? It's not even fillable because it doesn't make sense to put a Social Security number in for those. I know for the Kia situation we have right now, that Social Security numbers are used for 9 through 12, but for third and fourth graders, why are Social Security numbers in there? The New York Times did a great article. I want to say it's 2 weeks ago, and they followed an example of a Social Security number that was sold and used by someone else for several years, and the chaos it caused for the individual for several years because of that. Several years, not several months or several weeks, several years because of that. And one of the top targets is, students, young students in K through 12. because they can go undetected for long periods of time. And then it's a mess for them once they get out. So that's part of the reason that we want to make sure the student's social security number is protected, because it can be misused, just not immediately, but causes chaos for that student over a very long period of time. But I appreciate the IC staff. I appreciate our staff and the districts. It's a wonderful, as we say, collaborative environment, and well done every year. So thanks for those that attended.
David, there are a couple questions and also a Q&A. One thing I didn't mention, and it's the legislature has asked KDE to look at items where we could reduce data collections. We've got a few things. Most of the things that we're collecting are an OET type of thing. But if there's things that you know of that seem like they're overly burdensome, that you feel like are not federally required, there may be a state requirement that we would have some influence over, include those in the Q&A question there as a response.
I know you had 2 poll questions that you wanted to show. Can someone bring those poll questions up? One was about the school per cart information, the suite information, and Infinite Campus. So does someone have the ability to bring those up?
Dee Dee, do you want me to go ahead and launch the second one as well?
Yes, go ahead. Just that way. Please take a few minutes to respond to those. Appreciate your feedback, and your input is very much appreciated.
And the difference between this tool and the Go Soapbox tool is if someone joins after we launch those, they can't get to those. And that's why this timing's a little bit off. It's harder to get to them. This timing is off because we would, normally I would say even before the webcast started, open them all up, and it's a problem for someone that's joining right at the time, or 2 minutes after, or 3 minutes after. Well, thanks. And while you're doing that, I'll just go over a couple of other items. The Kentucky Education Technology System, we have additional budget requests. We've talked about that very, very often for the upcoming session. A piece of good news is the Kentucky Association of School Business Officials, during their conference, the Commissioner of Education, Commissioner Fletcher, spoke to them, and he went over with them the identified items that we had identified in the budget as far as our priority, our board, the top 5, the top 10, which technology right now with CATS is like number 4. And so he asked these school business officials to rank what they thought the top 5 and top 10 should be. And you hold your breath when someone does that, hoping that not knowing where it's at. The great news is those folks ranked CATS number 4 as well. So I appreciate any of the effort that's occurring between your position and talking with your finance office folks and your superintendent about this being an important priority. I know our State Board of Education, every time they meet on this topic, it always is talked about in the top 4 or 5. That's great news. It's great news that districts are leading it. Please continue doing that and helping us champion getting additional budget requests, because it helps you all directly. That's who we're championing for these services on your behalf. They're education technology related. So please help us to continue to do that as we go forth in the session. Let's talk about the session a bit. The legislation that we're expecting, or the topics that we're expecting to be discussed. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about our additional budget request and CATS and the other items that are on there. Really, since probably the March, April timeframe, I've been giving you updates on things that are related to Kentucky Wired and how those interact with what we're doing in Kentucky K-12. And I suspect that we will see some kind of legislation around that topic of Kentucky Wired in this session. I think that's a very, very high probability. Now, like any legislation, will it make it to the finish line? Is it approved, goes all the way to the House, the Senate, and the governor's office is signed off? It's a long road, but very high probability that will be there. The Kentucky Education Placement System, KEPS, is a very high probability that funding will be discussed to replace KEPS and use an off-the-shelf cloud-based system, which has a lot of pluses to it going forward. The always issue has been the funding source, and the funding source identified is really what teachers put in to recertify their license. And so a funding source is already identified and available, and teachers want the vacancies to be accurate. If you're not aware of it, is right now is a lot of districts have their own. If they're not using KEPS, they bought their own kind of system. And so from the state level, from the legislature level, they don't have a good feel for the number of teacher vacancies that we really have. And so a part of the effort with this would be getting a good handle on the teacher vacancies by putting a system in place that districts would use. Obviously, I'm not aware of any legislation yet that says thou shalt keep it up to date, which has been a big problem in it. It's just not entering it, but as positions are filled within a district, is removing that and showing that is filled, which has been a pretty constant problem with the KEPS system. And it has nothing to do with the KEPS software, actually. It has everything to do with data quality being maintained at the district level. So we'll see if getting a replacement for KEPS really solves that. But definitely there's interest in the KEPS environment. This is not something that necessarily our office is championing, but we're part of it. And definitely there's interest in doing it. And I'm making you aware of it because it's a technology enabled initiative. Another item that you're going to hear about with near certainty is the pre-K system data system. Met yesterday with the governor's office. This is going to be proposed by the governor's office. And there's always been interest in this. And my nearly 30 years here is, besides, doing something with SEEK and our interest in KETS and transportation, funding preschool has been something of great interest nearly every session. And my children attended preschool. I see the added value of that. Definitely helps kids get good run and go in kindergarten and first and second grade. But not every parent can afford that. And so part of the push over the years has been to try to fund that. But there's not really been data that's been available that shows the quantitative difference, enough of a quantitative difference or enough data available that it really makes to the early grades and then beyond. So there's interest in, having a somewhat standardized pre-K data system that does that. Now, state of Georgia does it. State of Georgia is, unlike Kentucky, does not have a standardized student information system. So it's very complex in the state of Georgia to build that and to maintain it. In Kentucky, that would not be so. Kind of like our early warning system that we had, instead of going out and build a homegrown system or bidding for that, we instead looked at our existing system with Infinite Campus and put that in place. And it's one of the national models, just not for here in Kentucky, but across the country. So something similar. So when I met with the governor's office yesterday, I talked about total cost of ownership beyond just the purchase price of 20%, all the people side of it, technology-wise, programmatic side that's needed. What are the outcomes that really is going to be used to measure that? It'll be interesting if it goes through all the wickets in state government there. But wanted you aware that there is interest in this, and we'll be taking a look at. I know we talked with Infinite Campus about their capability. They already do a lot of things in early childhood. What could we take advantage already there and build upon going forward with the pre-K system? So just want to make you aware of that, and that's got a high probability that we'll see that. Another high probability is something. For decades, I've been trying to clean up some language that hasn't been used in KETS around the Council for Education Technology and teacher computer purchases, and those really haven't been valid type of things for a couple of decades. And so I've been working with the legislative champion, and that will champion that for us and sponsor that for us. So hopefully Lisa Moore. We'll see that cleaned up, make it through the finish line. It's got better odds it's had in a long time. It's not controversial. It's just trying to get somebody to champion it. Testing is definitely going to be talked about during the session. And obviously any change to the summative test and even the interim tests have a big impact on online testing. So there is discussion about standardizing and having a standardized interim test across the state and funding that, and we'll see how far that goes. And then even changes to the testing system itself, which impacts online testing, impacts our school report card suite dashboard. So there's a lot of things that are impacted by that one there. I suspect we'll see also discussions and modifications to the traceable electronic communications bill that was passed last year. There was some negative unintended consequences that came out of that school districts have been speaking out loudly about. So I think we'll see some tweaking to that legislation, which definitely involved, since it involves technology so much, definitely will be involved with that, and we'll keep you up to date as that goes on. Another hot topic during the legislative session will definitely be artificial intelligence. In the summary notes that I sent you, I forwarded you what the legislature came out with in their AI committee, our Kentucky legislature, their recommendations. And particularly the one that says, I acknowledge that AI may have harmful effect to minors and consider legislative policies to protect minors on social media platforms. So they'll, the things that come to my mind is like companions, AI companions at younger ages. I'm not so sure that should be a best friend of anybody of any age, but definitely it's a concern of folks that are at younger ages and any of the things associated with it. But we're going to have a lot of time and energy spent on artificial intelligence, computer science, possibly computer science being added on as one of the requirements for graduation. I'm sure that will be part of the discussion in the upcoming session. All these are in proposed stage, not, I almost need to say this beginning, middle, a couple of times the middle at the end. These are things are proposed. It doesn't mean they make it all the way to the finish line.
And David, not necessarily proposed by KDE.
And not necessarily proposed by KDE. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. These are things that were in our discussions with legislators, just like the one that came out about, it's concerned about minors. We do have vendors and stuff that work on legislators and lobbyists that work on legislators, and that's where we see some of those items. And computer science is one of those. Obviously, we're for computer science and artificial intelligence. But do you make it a required course for graduation? Is the what will be discussed? I'm sure data sharing will also come up in the discussion of some type between different organizations and state government. At least anything else, or one theme that we expect that is education technology related that will come up in the session that I haven't covered. I know we went over these yesterday on our OET leadership team meeting a bit.
No, I think you covered everything that we had on our list, David. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it's fitting that the next item I talk to you about is artificial intelligence. We did update the resources and information available to you. I encourage you to take a look at that link. I've included the information from the Southern Region Education Board, along with a variety of other updated content. We've also updated our Commissioner on Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence. We're going to do that again this Friday. In his preparation for the upcoming legislative session. But I do encourage you to look through that document. I also want to remind you you can use any of the generative AI tools along with the regular search tools, but typically when I'm doing searches now, so far there's not a lot of advertisements when you're using the generative AI tools. So I do ask a lot of questions, more so that than I do Google, to eliminate being advertised to from vendors, kind of just get the straight facts, as Dragnet would say, my Dragnet guy would say. So I asked the question, and you can with any of these tools, what free resources and courses are available in AI for K-12 age students and teachers? And you will see an absolute plethora first of all, free resources that are out there at no cost at this time. Obviously, you got to be careful about it's free now, then they wrap around and, charging you for it later. And then there are paid ones out there. So for right now, and for most content, we really leave it up to districts to choose what specific courses that they want to use to meet your needs. And right now, that's including artificial intelligence. So while I didn't list that, I may add, as I think about it, a line in that little link there that says you can find all these by using the generative AI tools. But I'm just going to say it out loud here. That's another way you can find all kinds of free stuff. It is an absolute avalanche of free. Looks like high quality from pretty large companies that are trying to educate and provide resources on content that could be used in K-12. And there's also paid resources that are pretty good too. Next item up is our digital readiness report. In our summary notes in November, Marty Park went through that extensively. So we told you in December we would have a couple of those reports actually populated. They are. So two things are in this link. The first one is the slideshow that Marty went through. So you have that. The other one is if you click on that first link into digital readiness, you will find something that we've had for 20 some years, but we update it every year. This shows the latest data populated. And so for those that are new on our staff and in districts and anybody else is watching, when you go through those links, you can take your district or a group of districts and compare them to the region and to the state totals, or you can just get state. I mean, it's a wonderful way, and it's the people side, it's the technology side, and it's your data that is populated. So that's the latest information in there. Hopefully you can use it in your own needs for budget justifications and anything else that you would need it for to kind of show where your district is in comparison to others around you, in comparison of districts of your same size. So it's a wonderful kind of tool. It is updated. It shows trends. It just shows raw facts. I mean, it's got 3 different ways that you can take a look at data in there, and I encourage you to click on it and look in it. Anything else you need to say about that, Marty?
Just if you weren't able to join us last month, go back and watch last month to get a review of that. But I think the emphasis I would make today is, we're getting ready to start our technology planning cycle. And so that's a first stop shop to think through as you are planning technology implementation, to check and find other districts that are already implementing near similar to what you're thinking. So it's a great pre-work preset for tech planning that's coming up.
Yeah, and I think we saw AI assistant, so I know we're not. Okay, so just some of you need to be aware. We don't allow AI translators to join these meetings, and I find a lot of things they're not even aware that they brought their AI partner with them to sit in the corner and take notes. And so anytime we see those, and for the most part, I find that people are not aware that their AI partner has joined them, is we immediately take them off. We're constantly patrolling for them.
And just if you're not aware, we provide the AI empowered notes afterwards as well. So we have Copilot note taking right now, and so we provide those. So no need to bring an additional AI note taker.
Yeah. Thanks. All right. Next up is Mike Lettingham. Mike, you're going to give us an update on the Kentucky K-12 Network Components RFP. I know we started that process.
Yeah. It's upcoming that we've got a procurement activity that we need to do to establish our purchasing mechanism, our CATS contracts to support our product standards and to obviously maximize the advantage we can get by having CATS state contracts in place for all of our networking products and services. The current contracts, and Amy, I think you were going to pull up the slide. If you go ahead and pull that up, I'll kind of just even talk from that. Our current contracts expire June 30th of 2027. We currently have 6 different contracts that are held by manufacturers. There's multiple resellers that work on behalf of those 6 contract holders. currently today on the current contracts we have in place. Again, those contracts are expiring June 30, 2027. So we kind of work backwards from that. These are definitely E-rate impacted contracts. We maximize the benefit of federal E-rate funding as part of these contracts. So, we have to have new contracts in place basically by January, no later than January of 2027, to allow for E-rate application filing for that 2027-28 school year, starting July 1, 2027. So our worst case scenario is to have the new contracts in place by that January 2027 date. We really are targeting October of 2026 to allow 2 or 3 months of time to become familiar with the new contracts, the services associated to these contracts, but somewhere between October 2026 and 2027, or October 2026 to January 2027. So a little bit more information just to kind of, I think most everybody's pretty aware of this. The chart on the screen illustrates and shows our 6 current contract holders, shows the purchasing dollar amounts associated to those. That first year, 2021, you can kind of ignore. That was a partial year. That's when these contracts started. So there was little movement on these. That was little movement during that fiscal year that was associated to these contracts, and they weren't able to be utilized for filing for E-rate eligibility. So we had a crossover from the contracts before that. So don't pay too much attention to that first year. But if you look at the green block there in the upper right-hand corner, that kind of gives you a feel for the dollar amounts that are associated, overall dollar amounts associated to these contracts annually. And an important point on that, probably 70 to 80%, around 80% of that dollar amount is E-rate eligible dollar amount. And so, about 80% of those dollar amounts shown as E-rate eligible. And you look on the return on the investment, 80% of that E-rate eligible dollar amount comes back to the state in federal funding through rebates or discounts, whichever way that you apply for that. So obviously we get a huge bang for the buck out of the E-rate program associated to these contracts. We do establish the E-rate eligibility as part of putting these contracts in place. So again, big procurement activity going on. Seems like we line them up one after another of having these kind of contractual procurement activities going on. We will be ensuring that we represent districts' input on this, as well as our vendor participants in these type contracts to the extent that it's appropriate before we move forward with our procurement activity. But we're, it seems like a long ways away, but it becomes a pretty tight timeline in the world of doing procurements in state government, because we're usually given the guidance from our finance administration cabinet of allowing at least 1 year to do any kind of a new procurement activity when it comes to establishing contracts or any of those kind of activities. So anyways, want to give you all an update on that, give you a picture of what things are looking like, and let you know that this work will be going on, and you can anticipate we'll ensure that we've got good, solid procurement vehicles in place for networking products and services based on what we currently use those for, and certainly looking at expanding some possibilities of some things we include in these contracts that are a benefit to the school districts and the products and services you need to have access to.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Any kind of questions? We're always looking at the chat here, and thanks, Sean, for responding to Randy's question. We'll take a look at a couple of these other ones on here as we're going through. Next up, Q's update, Chuck Austin. So that'll be a regular item on this agenda for the foreseeable future. So what's going on with Q's?
Well, David, there's a lot going on with Q's. As a matter of fact, I think I may have been labeled Captain Chaos in the last year. So just as a reminder to everyone, Q's, we use that term, the Connected User Experience System. And it's really I'm going to call it a multi-year, 3-pronged program. All right. That over the, for the last year and a half and the next couple of years, we're going to be focusing really heavily on. And it's really all about, our move at the enterprise level to, the next generation of identity and access management, the implementation of a new solution for IP services, all leading up to ultimately the decommissioning of legacy Active Directory on-prem. So David, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about all three of those today. So let's talk about step one, which is the implementation of rapid identity with our partner Identity Automation. And I do want to take a moment to celebrate, all right, all of the hard work that's been done this year as we launched that initiative. When I look back on the last several months at the just amazing work from our advisory group, our early adopters, cohort 1, cohort 2, and we're getting ready to launch cohort 3, all right? It's just been an amazing opportunity to work really closely, not only with Identity Automation, our partner, but more importantly, all right, with our school district customers, with you as in the community. So I just wanted to thank you for all of your hard work. And just as important, the feedback that you've provided to us over the last several months to make our partner even better, which is what we do as a community. Mike Lettingham always loves to say, any new partnership we have, our partners make us better and we make them better. And that has certainly been evidence that we've seen over the first several months, okay, of the rapid identity implementation. We're continuing every day to improve the overall experience and the progress that we're making, and adjustments are going to be forthcoming at what I'm going to call halftime. All right. And I say halftime because when I look at the numbers right now, David, we've got 95 districts in flight at some level throughout the process. We've got 56 that have went live with provisioning. We've got 30 districts that have started or completed the claim process. We're now mounting a big push on federation, and it's federation of both Google, Entra, Infinite Campus, and Tyler, as well as now starting to go back and lay in some of our really super important cybersecurity components, which are Safe ID, Shield ID, and Fish ID. So we've just made a ton of progress, but as any good coach likes to do at halftime, and I will say this, we're winning and we're winning well, but we've got some adjustments to make thanks to your feedback, okay? I've had the privilege, David, for the last month and a half of traveling around now to 5 of our regions, meeting directly with our EdTech community, having some really awesome, candid conversations about stuff we're doing now, things that are coming down the road. And some of the things that we've heard loud and clear that we're going to be making adjustments to are, number one, we recognize, and Identity Automation recognizes, that we've got some resource adjustments we need to make within their team, all right, both in quantity and timing. It's a great company with great people and a great product, but as we've all know and we experience, we can always get better at the responsiveness, especially during those critical times when end users start getting impacted, like during go live. Okay, so we've got some adjustments we've got to make there. We're absolutely committed to that, as well as Identity Automation is. Additionally, we're going to have to get a little bit more deliberate with the pacing of each district's implementation. All right, getting you to the point of go live, and then quickly after that, and quickly is a relative term, but getting you from go live to claim to federation, getting you through that maze is something you're going to see us really start. I hesitate to use the word pushing because we've got so much going on. As much as we'd like to start bringing closure to a lot of our early sites so that we can really start to focus on cohort 3, 4, and 5, especially going into 2026. So that being said, I'm really excited. The testimonies around queues that I've received from districts, all right, of the better place they're in has been overwhelming. Okay, when I hear testimonies that my data's never been cleaner, all right, when I hear testimonies that I have teachers now that can keep students connected to the learning environment in real time, because something as simple as delegating the ability for a teacher to reset a password is super powerful. All right. And then there's the ease of use. There's the automation that's being put in place. And all of that has been based on a ton of hard work at the local level exclusively. So moving on to leg number 2, IP services. Once we get authentication pulled out of Active Directory over to Rapid Identity, phase 1, we're now in the middle of what I'm going to call phase 2 of Q's, which is the IP services move. So right now, the initial phase of that is we're doing the rack and stack at a regional level. I think we knocked out Region 7 a week ago. I know that Courtney DeRossit's on the road today in Region 8. They're doing rack and stacks in Region 8, non-service impacting, where we're actually mounting the InfoBlocks hardware, as well as removing a lot of the old KIH3 hardware. There's a Munis component in the middle of that that we're also coordinating at the local level, where we're swapping out a VPN. That work's going to be going on for the next few weeks. And ultimately, we're now starting to talk about pilots for the actual transition of both DNS and DHCP from Active Directory over to the new solution, which, oh, by the way, has already been done for KDE. So, we were the first one to eat from that bowl of dog food. It went extremely well. So there's going to be a schedule and a readiness guide that's going to be forthcoming. All right.
Chuck, it was champagne. We're the first
Pardon?
to drink that champagne.
Absolutely, David. So the readiness guide is in process right now of review. Our pilots will be testing the readiness guide as well as the overall process to make sure we can make that as smooth as possible. I look for that part of the initiative to be a really light lift at the local level. Ultimately, as we head toward the bigger lift, which is the decommissioning of Active Directory. What I will tell you right now is we've got an advisory group assembled. You should have a representative in every region that you can ask questions of, as well as your CETS engineer. They're doing a great job of collecting information statewide right now, all right, of all the different systems that people have integrated with AD, and more importantly, some of the solutions that people have implemented or are evaluating to move away from some of the legacy approaches, which is valuable intel. Something I'm just super excited about is on January the 9th in Region 1 and January the 12th in Region 2, we've got some awesome community leadership where those regions at a regional level are going to be bringing CIOs and technical staffs together just to talk about, all right, things they're planning, things they're evaluating, different, more modern approaches that people need to be looking to as we move away from that legacy service. So, really, David, at the end of the day, I mean, we got a long runway to get to decommissioning Active Directory. We know there's a ton of information that we've got to communicate. There's a ton of intel that we're still gathering. Our goal is to really get well underway of decommissioning all domains throughout 2026 calendar year. But we do recognize, due to the lift in complexity at the district and state level, there's still a ton of planning and testing to be accomplished before we can even start scheduling. Now we would really like, and this may be, David, I know in our team huddle, okay, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about having a wild hair, okay, and the wild hair was defined as, possibly a great idea, provided that the purpose and the people you're experiencing it with, all right, is for all the right reasons. We'd love to get a few decommissioned sites under our belts by the time spring cast rolls around in 2026. That may be a little too optimistic, but we're going to keep trying to do that. And currently we're working with Volta, InfoBlocks, Identity Automation, and Insight that we've brought to the table as a Microsoft partner, just to make sure that all we're doing and all we're planning, we're doing so in a Microsoft supported manner, because we do realize we've got to make sure that we can check that block and leave people in a really good state. So, man, that's a ton of information. I will just continue to say, your feedback, your efforts at the local level have been tremendous and greatly appreciated. And I do want you to understand that we do listen, our partner listens, and we will make the adjustments necessary to make this even easier for cohorts 3, 4, and 5 than anybody before you. So David, thank you for that time to kind of run through that program today. David, you're muted.
Thanks. Is there a timeline or deadline of decommissioning AD? I saw that question.
It's a great question, as a matter of fact. Okay. There's a rough timeline. Okay. And I think it's important for people to understand. The timeline is primarily predicated, and I hate to use this term, by finances. I mean, obviously at the state level, and David has spent a lot of time and will spend even more time as we move toward this legislative session, talking about the funding increases we need for the program. Super important. And unfortunately, without those funding increases, our ability to innovate hits a ceiling. And when it hits a ceiling, it means that in order to innovate, there are things we have to quit doing. Okay. Now, when it comes to the decommissioning of Active Directory, obviously we're going to be carrying some duplicative cost at the state level. I'm going to say for a period of time. And that period of time, we would love to be as small as possible, but we also recognize we got to do this, do it right, and do it well. Our goal right now is that by June 30th of 2027, at the latest, to have all sites decommissioned, which obviously means, by really August 30th of 26, we want to have rapid identity implemented. We want to have IP services done, and we want to be well underway with decommissioning. But obviously, there's a lot of variability there, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is to make sure we do it right and do it well. So yeah, we've got some timelines associated with it that we're working against, primarily on the financial side. So we're gonna keep the pressure on all the initiatives to make sure we can meet those timelines.
And it's real blunt about a lot of stuff is money.
Oh, yeah.
We do not have it. I can even go with our own OET staff to fund both. Do not have it. We're here scrambling, just trying to get additional budget requests for the basic stuff, not to fund a parallel system. And so we do not have the money to fund both. Now, obviously, a district, if they want to on their own, they can take that on. They'll be, we really won't have anything to do with that. They take it on and create a parallel system, and they'll fund it separately. But we do not have the option to run parallel systems. And we knew that when we went down this Q's path. It is a transition is what we are doing, and we're transitioning off of it. So you're right. That's the latest date, Chuck. Obviously, we'd like to be off it earlier.
Correct.
That is I won't use the words, but all goes bad date is that date. We obviously want it off much earlier. Yeah. Thanks for that update. Next, we're going to get an update on our GoGuardian implementation and our services. I know we did an initial transition from Lightspeed to GoGuardian, but there's ongoing services of that initial implementation. And for the foreseeable future and our OET team huddles, and in this one, we will be getting a GoGuardian services update. We have X number of districts that are still on an older version of GoGuardian, real old version that we're concerned about, that I track of what percentage of their computers in their district are still on an old version. Is it 1%, which may be stuff in storage, or is it 80, 90, 100%? And just interested in those that have moved to the newer versions. And so there's a variety of things associated with that service. So Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so the short update is we continue to watch this, because we know that with each version that GoGuardian has put out, they're fixing previous issues. So when we hear districts say they may or may not have problems with certain things they're encountering, it's very important for us to validate that they're using the most current version. So here in KDE, we recently deployed 1.21.2. One of the things we've been tracking is how many districts are still using 1.19.2 and previous versions, which we believe have some more serious flaws in them that have been addressed. So there's not a day that goes by that we're not working with GoGuardian on a daily basis. And one of those major things that we're working on is reporting and dialing in the reporting that's both accurate and and actionable for school districts to take a look at that. So we continue to work on that. We're sharing that data with the KEs, and we're improving that each time we kind of go back and forth with GoGuardian. And I've been already emailing with them this morning about some data and some questions, trying to dial that in even further. So.
Well, another part of the monthly update, just so you know, Matt, is where we at with the waiver site. So it's where we at the services. Or is anything outstanding? I'm going to be interested in that topic. So we had 13 or 14 districts that are waiver. So there's X number of those that indicated that they're watching it this year or sometime during this year. They'll be transitioning over. We need to be aware of that because from our point of view, beginning the next school year, that we only pay for what's being used. And so we're going to be wanting to really understand who's using it, who's not using it. And also to make sure the superintendent and chief financial officer, just not the technology staff, understands there's a free product that if the district is turning it down, really make sure they understand financially that they are turning down a free product and they're absorbing 100% of the cost and anything that goes an issue that's associated with it. So we're tracking all the districts, and you'll be contacted by GoGuardian and saying there's to be X number of districts. I don't know if it's 4 or 5. They say I'm staying with what I'm using. I have other things that are connected to it. So that will always be part of this update, is where we at with the waiver sites. You don't have to give up data, just so you know, Matt, is every time it's going to be where we at with the waiver sites.
Yeah, we keep an eye on that. I ask GoGuardian for that every couple of weeks. Actually, I think every Friday they send me an update, and I include that in a report a couple times a month to David, let him know where that stands. And we ask them to circle back with each of these districts that have wavered and have conversations with you. So if you're one of those districts, this should sound very familiar to you because you have folks like Aaron and Marissa reaching out and wanting to discuss how the progress is going and see where you're standing on making a decision to eventually adopt.
And I say we use the product ourselves. We were the first site to use it, so we try to keep in touch with it. We don't necessarily always go to the latest version because some of it I want to keep in touch with people with older versions to make sure we're in touch with as much as possible. But we did update to a more modern version. Steve Gum asked the question, what version of GoGuardian should they be using? I would say also you need to answer what version they shouldn't be using. It's for me, and Matt knows this, Matt Jury knows this. I'm interested primarily in the sites that are using something before 19.2.
That's right.
19.2 stabilized. So and even 19.6, I'm interested before 19.2. And then who have got a 19.6, which was a little bit better, and then the other ones that are out there. I think there's a more of an answer is, for me, are you on something before 19? That's the ones I'm most concerned about. And I don't think we're saying you got to be on version 21, 20 something. Would you say that's correct, Matt?
That's correct. We saw the significant change in stability with 19.2. So that's why we measure that as kind of the line in the sand to see who's on each side of that. We stabilized on 19.6 in KDE because there were some improvements to Captive Portal, which has been continued to have a few issues. And so then we made the jump to 1.22 or 1.21.2 here just in the last 2 weeks. We tested it in OET first and then rolled it to the rest of KDE last week. And we saw some additional improvements to Captive Portal there, which is why we have now standardized on that version. But we really view 19.2 as a turning point from the era of release fatigue that we all went through, including us here, in trial and error with GoGuardian, and they finally got a lot of the kinks worked out with 19.2. So that's why we kind of report against that.
Anything else on GoGuardian, Matt?
No, like Paul just put in the comments, 1.22.1 is the newest approved version that's available. And I think that we just authorized that here within the last 2 weeks as well.
Because we kind of go through a process to make sure we feel it's in a good place before it goes statewide.
Yep, that's right.
Thanks for those in our staff that play that role. Before I go on to the next item, I'm looking through the chat. I appreciate that feedback for anyone that wants to do a live question. There's a lot of content that's free out there and available. I mentioned corporations, but universities do that as well. They're constantly out there trying to provide content and guidance. So I saw where Western Kentucky University and University of Kentucky is doing it. So those are resources too that I saw out there. Data sharing, Martin Herbener, I saw that question. And Lisa's response to you was correct. Everybody wants data sharing, but are you paying for the initial, just not the initial, but the ongoing costs? And I would say that by the pre-K. I have found over my 30 plus years and dealing with things that are funded by the legislature, there's a blind spot of paying for ongoing costs. They'll pay for the initial 20%, but the other 80%, which is paying a vendor ongoing costs and the people side, that you need to add positions to do it. And data sharing is a wonderful thing, but you got to build something which has initial cost. You got to maintain something to build that bridge between them, and then you got to have the people on both the programmatic and technical side to keep that up operational with that bridge, and that gets lost. I know there's nobody's not for data sharing. It's always the question: can you do it? Should you do it? How much? And the real killer is who pays. That always has people turning their head, looking around the room, and then having a legal purchasing mechanism. And Jared Mills, it was good seeing you at the state championship game, and it was super cold. So I want to circle back on those comments. Okay, next up is we have Sean Jackson. Last time that we spoke with you all is we talked about we were getting ready to release the computer science report, the 2025 report, to the legislature, which was due on 1 December, and that has been done. So Sean, I know you briefed our staff a little bit on this, and you can give an update on to our districts as well.
Yeah, I've just taken a few minutes, or I'm just going to take a few minutes, and I've already posted the link directly to this year's report. And, I want to remind everybody that this is not a scorecard. This is just to keep track so that we name and claim students and make sure that districts are provided the support in implementing these computer science standards, but also, fulfilling the obligation that the legislature set for us to make sure that we keep track of where this is happening. And I really want to highlight some of the progress that we've made, even though, we always have ebbs and flows in programs and in pathways. But, when comparing Kentucky to national averages, we really have some success to highlight. So one of those things that we really want to point out is that Kentucky is 15% above the national average in the percentage of high schools offering at least one foundational computer science course to its students. Also, 17% more schools offering computer science when compared to other states with no computer science graduation requirement. That's really key as this legislative session comes up and some of these lobbying groups come forward and say that we need this. We're making progress. We're not last. We are actually succeeding in a lot of different ways. Also, when you compare graduation cohorts to other states, we're 3% above the national average in the number of students participating in computer science throughout their entire high school career. And I really want to point out that our middle schools are in our districts are really thinking about how do we provide these opportunities to our students when they have to choose from so many different pathways at the high school level. Well, our middle school course, Introduction to Computer Science Middle School, is the course of computer science with the highest enrollment in the state. 4,888 students took that last year. That's something to really celebrate because some of these districts are offering high school credit. So when comparing us to other states, David, you like to talk about, hey, we're not last. We've been leading the way. And I still think that we're a leader in our strategy and implementation of computer science. But we have a lot of celebrations. Are we down in the number of students from last year? Yes. We really want to dig in and find out why that is. Are we losing teachers to things like math and science? Are we having to do that? But I want to tell districts that are online right now, if you have a desire to offer computer science and you're not currently doing it, we have avenues like the Approval for Computer Science Code to be able to certify teachers with any background to teach computer science with a proven strategy that other states are trying to emulate. When looking at this implementation map, again, we're not having a competition here. We want to name and claim students and assist school districts as best we can. But I've included the link in the chat. We're really not going to spend a lot of time on this because this is always available, and you can always go back in our CATS master plan documentation to dig back into these. But really, I want to highlight that we still have lots of progress to be made when it comes to other demographic groups in taking computer science. Our females are not represented at the same rate in computer science as they are in the rest of, our state enrollment. And we really have a lot of progress to make in our other demographic and racial cohorts. So, spend some time on this. Coach up your districts in this, because that if you're struggling to find a technician, you may have an opportunity to engage and empower these students in help desk type opportunities and really train them up. And we have proven strategies in other districts that have done this with success, and we want to assist you in any way possible.
Thanks, Sean. And I also have a link to this computer science report in the AI link that I shared with you earlier, because it's part of the plan. Related to this topic, the Kentucky Board of Education met on the 3rd and 4th, and they, you have to go through this process to make sure they don't drop off the board. So every, I think, 7 years, something like that, you got to make sure you say, I still want to have a piece of legislation or reg in place. And so we said, we still want to have academic standards for computer science in place, with the understanding is we'll be modernizing them along with a lot of other academic standards to include the artificial intelligence flavor. The We Lead Doc Computer Science got shifted from December to February. So Sean, you'll be part of that discussion in February. Appreciate all the work and energy, Sean, that you spent on this topic and championing this for us. Appreciate it. And the butter.
Appreciate you.
And the butter.
Oh, yeah, and I've got an entire pan of butter chews out here, so you can have all you want.
I do want to thank, I came in this morning, there was this bag. I don't know who did this.
Well, I didn't tell you. It was actually for me. Did you know?
No.
There's a note in here that says for Morgan.
This is for Marty.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
The Pawpaw ALLH.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me who, I don't know, I need to know who did that. I have searched all over for those, because I'll go into every store I go into. Thank you, Dee Dee. Every store I go into, I pass by the ALH session, and you'll see cherry, you'll see blackberry, you'll see the diet, you'll see the regular, you don't see this. So thank you. Appreciate that. That made it, plus the butter chews, I'm going to be in a good place today. So thank you. And for our, just a reminder for our staff, our OET staff, Bob, I'm going to let you speak here in just a second. I just want to get this admin thing out of the way. Is our OET meal, Christmas meal, is what time for those that we're doing? Is that starting at 11:45, 11:30? What time are we starting that? Is that supposed to start for those that are running that?
It's not supposed to start till noon. I think the turkey's being delivered 11:45.
Okay, all right. So we'll start at noon. All right, thanks for doing that. So Bob, we had 2 poll questions that related to cybersecurity. We spent a large portion of our last meeting with districts. We went to a closed session to talk about, and I hope those were helpful to you, especially during this time of year that we know where cyber criminals will be, while we're celebrating and taking time off, this is where they start really ramping up and taking advantage of it. Real Scrooges they are, for literally Scrooges. So I know you had 2 Go Soapbox questions. I don't know, Marty, you can show those, and I just give you a chance to discuss those 2.
Yeah, and just real quick, I know that Fishing has just been eating us alive here in Kentucky K-12, both at KDE and in the school districts. And there's two different types of fishing that I want to kind of ask you guys about. One is where, and they're both credential fishes, but one is where the victim is required to enter their username and password into a form, and the other one is hard to kind of catch. But if you have users who say, hey, I never even entered in my username and password, but somehow now something is logging in as me, someone has my credentials. And so I want to get a feel from you guys if, if you're seeing both of those happening or just one or the other. And so here's that first one. If your district's had one or more accounts compromised, were any of them apparently compromised with even without the victim entering their credentials, meaning they just clicked on a link or opened an attachment and never entered their login credentials? Now, just give me your best guess at that. Um, like I said, sometimes folks will enter their credentials in, and then what you will hear is, no, I never entered my credentials. I never typed my password. And so I just want you to give your best guess on that, yes or no, because I'm really interested to see kind of what our vulnerability is, what our risk is for some of these, and hopefully it's low on some, and hopefully, a good amount of training will be able to help folks. There's no 100% secure technology way to prevent phishing in your district or at KDE or anywhere for that matter. But training is where I think we're going to really see the biggest improvements, and that's in helping folks identify when an email is fishy, when it doesn't come from who it says it comes from, when they should ask someone for a little extra help. That's where I think we're going to see some really big wins, and especially as we're going through the holidays and everyone's getting all sorts of FedEx fishes and UPS, and then we're right into tax time, and folks are going to be asked about their W-2s, and we really need to kind of coach people up. We need to get them really to where they are defending themselves, defending their district, defending all their students and their students' data that they're working with against these fishes. So, David, that's kind of my ask there, and I appreciate everyone for what you're doing and for answering these poll questions, giving us an idea of where you're at. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I do hope everyone has a good Christmas break. By the way, that pawpaw drink is I was at my mom's this weekend, and I came really close. She has some pawpaws in her refrigerator. It took everything LA for me not to drink one of those and open it up. She grew up on pawpaws, and so I had them a lot when I was younger. I'll finish with a fun story for me. Normally in our OET team huddles, we do cool and interesting news. So this past weekend, I went to the high school I'm at. It's called Johnson Central. Johnson Central has a Hall of Fame. They've had it for 20 years. And one of the inductees this year, his name's David King, kept on asking my mom to attend because he was identified to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, to attend as his guest in her role of being his second grade teacher. Now you don't hear many people when they're inducted is really being so persistent about a second grade teacher being there. Now, David King, just so you know, has went on from Johnson Central and has had an incredibly successful career in the U.S. Army as a lieutenant colonel, and his sons are currently captains in the U.S. Army. And he traveled a long distance, as his sons did, to attend that. But when I brought my mom in, one of the fun things about being in the world of education and being the son of a teacher or school leader is watching the eyes of how they look at your mom. Just the genuine love and appreciation and gratitude. It's kind of like how my wife looks at our grandkids, those eyes. So I brought her, they had it at Johnson Central, they had it in the cafeteria. And so it was just getting set up, and there was not that many people in there. And David King went out of his way and, started, approaching her, and you could see the tears in his eyes of seeing her. And then, which was, very emotional to watch that, and just the gratitude that he had, because what most of us don't know is, everybody has stuff going on in their life. But as a young, in his second grade, he had something pretty traumatic that was going on in his home. And teachers play this role, coaches play this role, leaders play this role of filling a void and stabilizing an environment which may not be so stabilized at home. And so while I know a lot of the folks that appreciate my mom appreciate her in the classroom, and she was definitely an outstanding teacher and school leader. It was at that time that without me going through it, something he was going through pretty traumatic in his home. There was a real stabilizing force, and to watch a lieutenant colonel in his presentation, kind of not be able to finish it. He had to take long pauses and tears with his, his family there and his sons there. And then afterward, the hugs. It really does show us, for me, besides being a son that gets to see that and experience that, and it's got to be part of this really cool environment education for the past, 34 years. Your role makes a difference. You may not realize what you're doing, and a lot of what we're doing behind the scenes, we're not like a daily teacher, is, every hand leaves a legend. And that was the picture that was hand drawn behind them. Every hand leaves a legend. And so you may not realize it, the difference you're making in schools, the difference you're making in people in your personal life. You may not realize it till someone, 30 years later asks you to attend something and thanks you. So it's fun to attend, to go around those events and show gratitude and thanks for folks of what they've done. And so definitely I want to say thanks to our OET staff. I'm definitely very grateful for been in this role for as long as I have, and all the people I've got to interact with on our staff and in our districts and with our vendor partners. So I hope you do have a good Christmas break, a good New Year's out there, and we'll see you in January. Take care.